Thank you. Thank you, Liva. Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. Once again, my name is Andrii. Thank you so much for still being here at the end of the very long second day of the conference. I am a journalist and I also happen to come from Ukraine, and I am in close contact with the ecosystem there, and I wanted to use these 15 minutes to just give you a very quick overview of what is going on in the country and how the technology ecosystem is coping with the war and how it is supporting itself and the rest of the population in the effort to overcome and persevere over this Russia's aggression. So first up, just a very quick introduction of what was the ecosystem like last year. This data is taken from the Dealbook of Ukraine, a great document, a great report that was just published earlier this week. I'm going to use it shamelessly, but do feel free to look it up and download and dig into the numbers. So we have over 2,000 startups in Ukraine with more than $800 million invested last year. Some of the milestones from last year as well, the IPO of the company called GitLab, which some of you may know. The product itself of GitLab was created fully in Ukraine by the technical co-founder of this startup, Dmytro Zaporozhets, who then went on to co-found the company together with Dutch co-founder Brandy. So the company went on to IPO with a multi-billion valuation last year. We had our first decacorn in Ukraine, the company called Grammarly. Many of you probably know it. It's a grammar checking company that's been used by very many people across the globe. We had some of our exits. Augmented Pixels was acquired by Qualcomm. Deposit Photos was acquired by Vista. Attendify was acquired by Hopin. Again, a company that many of you probably know. So the point I'm making here is that this was a very much thriving and healthy ecosystem, and the startups coming from Ukraine, they really run the widest gamut possible from AI and image processing all the way to literal rocket science and everything else in between. But then, of course, the Russians came 24th of February 2022. The full-scale invasion became into the Ukrainian territory. Over 2,000 civilians have been killed so far. In this war, more than 200 children have been killed. Russia has launched more than 1,300 missiles onto the territory of Ukraine. More than 5 million people have been forced to leave the country. About twice that many had to move internally, had been displaced in order to flee the war zones and be somewhere in a safer place. Multiple cities and villages are now just lying in ruins. People are losing their homes. This is a home where I spent about 7 years of my life. This is the house where my mother lived up until mid-February of this year. Now it's obviously doesn't really exist anymore. This is in the city of Kharkiv. So this war has obviously touched everyone in Ukraine, in Europe, and probably in the world, including, of course, the Ukrainian tech ecosystem and entrepreneurs. So if you think about the ecosystem in Ukraine, though, in general, what you see is this sort of pillars, the way I want to think about it. First of all, we have the IT service companies. This is something that Ukraine IT ecosystem is very well known for. These are mostly companies that do software development for external customers, mostly outside of Ukraine. Tens of thousands of Ukrainian tech talent are working in these companies, and these companies have proven to be basically a tech backbone of Ukraine that is very resilient even in the face of the war. Most of these companies, I have talked to a few of them, most of them keep working. They are taking very good care of their employees. They help them to move either out of the country or towards more quiet regions within the country. Most of their customers are still with them, so they are running their businesses. They are helping to run the country's economy, and they are doing a lot to volunteer and aid the rest of the population of the country. Another pillar was the startups focused on the local market. Ukraine is a reasonably big country with about 40 million people in population, so the local market is sizable. There were a lot of these startups focused on local market, but also smaller startups focused elsewhere. And those are the hardest hit ones. Those are the ones that actually need the most help right now, because it is absolutely impossible for them to work, and they are just waiting for the war to end. Also, there are global startups with HQs or core technology teams in Ukraine. Think Grammarly or Riddle or MacPaw or Reface, companies like that. Those are very much similar in this respect to IT service companies. They are running their businesses, they're taking care of employees, and they're coming together with their peers from the ecosystem to help the country win and survive. I wanted to bring a few stories just to give you a few examples of what is happening in the ecosystem right now, what's happening to startups that are working in Ukraine. One of them is Goodex. Just read the story in the Ukrainian media recently. So it is a very much local startup, a local grocery delivery startup, which was quite popular. It had about $8 million in yearly turnover. Right now it is absolutely fully 100% folded. 100 people have been laid off, and it is just trying to use its infrastructure to relaunch in Poland, but everything that they had in their warehouses in Ukraine, they just in the first day, they basically had given it all up as humanitarian aid to people in Kyiv and across the country, just in order to help whomever they could. Another startup, Spotify.tech, a female-founded startup in Ukraine. The founder, I just talked to her the other week. She had to move to Spain with her kids. She is very passionate about the sport tech vertical. She has created an NGO called Sport Tech Hub in Ukraine, helping different startups in this category across the country. So right now, she is working on two projects. One is about sports medicine, and the other is about U16, very young athletes who are getting a special platform which she describes as a hybrid of LinkedIn and TikTok. It is really hard to imagine, but I suppose it does exist. So right now she's working on these two projects. She's looking for clients. She is looking for angels. They even got a grant from the Ukrainian Startup Foundation of $50,000. However, the war started. They never received the money. So right now, they're looking for ways to survive this. But at the same time, this founder, she keeps helping other Ukrainian startups. She does pitching sessions for them, and she is even going to a conference on behalf of another startup. So pretty much, in a way, I don't know, not competitor maybe, but her peer, going to another conference on behalf of them because the founders cannot leave Ukraine. So this is another example of what Ukrainian entrepreneurs are doing right now. Another very local startup is called Strafy.ua. This is a very, again, locally focused company. What they did is they helped more than 2 million Ukrainian drivers, car drivers, to pay their fines in full and on time. And this is not very easy in Ukraine just because of some local peculiarities, if you will, but they brought more than 6 million euros in the budget of Ukraine, and they really made it much easier and much more streamlined to pay your fines. Obviously, after the war started, there was absolutely no way for them to continue. So right now they're trying to pivot and use their technology as a solution to be sold to authorities and governments in European countries. So they are again looking for clients and looking for partners. Another company from Ukraine. I mean, I can go on for a long time, of course, but this is going to be the last one, I think. Another grocery store. They have done the same as Goodex. They had to fold their commercial operation. They started volunteering, and they have already coordinated and distributed about 100 tons of humanitarian aid across Ukraine, just because they have the infrastructure to be able to coordinate this kind of thing. They have a distribution network. They use volunteers to deliver the aid where it needs to be delivered. They are going to resume commercial operations as soon as it is possible, but at the same time they have created the volunteering part. They sort of spun it off to create a separate arm of the organization, because obviously we all are going to need these volunteering efforts in Ukraine in a very long run, even after the war has ended. So the tech community, it just has come together to help, to volunteer, to provide support to all the people in Ukraine who need it. They have created a lot of IT projects. This is just a small part of it, but there are a lot of different projects for all sorts of things. Again, from an app for air raid sirens, very, very annoying one, but one that's needed. basically every day across Ukraine still, all the way to animal identification startups and the things for government tenders. So the community is doing everything it can to persevere. The VC side of things as well, so a lot of volunteering going on this side, but unfortunately the deal flow, the deal landscape has been very quiet and very calm since the war started, because obviously Ukrainian VCs are mostly taking care of their portfolios, and they are trying again to support everyone around them through volunteering, while international VCs, who historically provided most of the money into the country, they often do not have the mandate to invest in companies that are so dependent on a team that sits in a country that's basically at war right now. So there is a lot of private initiatives right now from VCs, both in Ukraine and internationally, and the grant initiatives that I'm going to get to in a minute. But in terms of deals, we have very few exceptions, like Geek Ventures that has invested in three deals since the war started, but that's more of an exception than the rule. So there is help right now for Ukrainian startups. I just wanted to list a few initiatives here in case it is useful for someone, or in case someone wants to support these initiatives, being a VC or just someone outside of Ukraine who feels like they are capable of doing so. Google has created a $5 million fund to support Ukrainian startups with grants of up to $100,000 per startup. There is a fund, a grant initiative called 7 Wings, created in Ukraine, but they're using donations from outside of Ukraine to provide up to $50,000 per startup in grants. There is UA Founders, another matchmaking sort of platform where entrepreneurs from Ukraine can ask for help and support. And then there is Support Ukrainian Startups Now, which is an initiative by Free Ukraine Foundation and the Ukrainian VC Association, providing smaller grants again. But the whole idea here, of course, is to help startups to survive this wartime, after which they, of course, can start building again normally, they start raising funds again normally, and start living normally. And after the war, I do believe that we are all going to see a very big ecosystem boost after this war ends, after Ukraine as a country manages to persevere and overcome the Russian invasion, because while I was talking to all these companies, while I was talking to all these founders, I've heard a whole lot of different things, and I've seen a whole lot of different stories in the media. What I haven't heard and haven't seen was that someone was giving up. Absolutely nobody's given up right now. Everybody continues to support their country, to support their peers, to take care of their employees, of their loved ones, everyone around them, basically. And everyone is very excited about what they could build after this war ends and after Ukraine regains its territory and its independence. And of course, this also means a very big delayed fundraising appetite from Ukrainian startups, which I believe will be satisfied, because there is also a lot of signs that a lot of new grant initiatives will be available again after the war ends for Ukrainian startups. So in the meantime, I listed some initiatives, but also if you are a startup or just a person, if you need some sort of any piece of software, anything that usually demands subscription, I would really suggest you go to this great project, one of the projects created by Ukrainian entrepreneurs now, called spendwithukraine.com. So it lists all the different products that are created in Ukraine. If there is something you need, consider buying it from a Ukrainian company, and this way supporting the ecosystem and supporting the projects created in Ukraine. I will leave you with two more QR codes for websites that accept donations for Ukraine to support this country. And if you don't know what's on this image, ask me later on, I will tell you more. And if you have any other questions, if you want any introductions to the startups that I mentioned or that I didn't mention, do find me later on, drop me a line. I'm very happy to connect you to whomever you are interested in helping or asking more questions. Thank you.